The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Nick Zulovich, part of the team at Cherokee Media Group and senior editor of the Auto Finance Journal and Subprime Auto Finance News. In today's webinar, why your dealership needs an omni-channel communication strategy in 2018, we're going to learn more from Dan Wright and Brooke Grant of Podium. But before we get started, I want to go over a few housekeeping items for today's webinar. Please make sure you've dialed in using the phone number provided in your communication email, or you're able to listen via your PC speakers. We are recording today's webinar, and we'll make that recording available to you as soon as possible. You will be in listen-only mode for this webinar, but we will reserve some time after the presentation for a Q&A session. You can submit your questions at any time through the questions box on the GoToWebinar control panel. And if we aren't able to get to your question today, don't worry, because we'll forward it on to the team at Podium so they can respond back to you directly via email. And lastly, if you have any difficulty during today's webinar, please click on the hand icon on the GoToWebinar control panel to alert a member of our team. So with plenty of knowledge and recommendations to share, let's get right to Dan and Brooke for our webinar. The floor is now yours.
Great, thank you so much for that introduction. We're really excited to be here today and talk about omni-channel approaches to communication and how you guys can be effective in that. So I just want to start out by going over the agenda. We're going to talk about a few different things today, and one of the coolest parts we're going to talk about is the identifying these key traits of a car buyer. And then we're going to go through that journey that these car buyers have and how that's changed in this day and age of technology, and why an omni-channel communication is so important in that process and in today's marketplace. And then at the very end, we're going to go through some tips for implementing a successful strategy, just to make sure that you are implementing a successful omni-channel strategy. So, and as they said, please hit us up with any questions. We love questions, and we'll be happy to answer those at the end of the webinar. So let's start by talking about today's car buyers. First of all, they know more, right? And this is so true with access to Google. The majority of web traffic is on their phone. So if they're, pulling into your dealership, they can Google a car and be like, is there a cheaper version of this, or is there a better model of this? Within seconds, they know more about the car, right, than they ever have. They also want more than they ever have. Consumers, they want this convenience and this ease in the process of, buying a car. So if, the process of you, interacting with your customers is not convenient and easy, they're going to go somewhere else, right? Today's consumers also share more. So if they have a positive experience with you, they're going to be way more likely to, take a, Instagram, be like, just bought my new, convertible from this dealership. Or, hey, I went to this dealership, it's horrible, the sales reps were super pushy, never going back. People share all the time. And so this is another challenge for local businesses and dealerships like you. And so being able to have tools that allow you to, kind of thwart that and make it better. Another thing about today's car buyers is that they do more. They're a lot more proactive. They don't want to wait. Like I said before, if you aren't giving them service, if you aren't answering the phone, if they are coming in and not getting help, they can go to Google, or they can say, hey, where's the next best place? Or, and they'll go. They're also more mobile, as I mentioned. The majority of web traffic is now on a mobile device. So, smartphones are being used, whatever it is, whatever medium, they're researching cars, they know a lot more than they have because they have a mobile device on hand at all times. So this kind of shifts the landscape, right? It's a lot different than it has been in the past. And it's a lot different with, from traditional communication. We're going to talk a little bit about that in this omni-channel approach and how you can really, get these, today car buyers. This is across the board. This isn't any certain age group, but these are, the characteristics that we're seeing. So what's that journey like of this car buyer then? So we've talked about the characteristics. Now, what is the journey? So these online reviews and text messaging have truly just transformed this car buying experience, right? So let's say, for instance, this actually happened to me this past weekend. I'm looking to buy a Jeep Wrangler, and I Googled, Jeep Wranglers, near me, or on there's this local place called KSL that's kind of like everyone sells used cars. So I looked up, where can I buy a cheap Jeep, right? I just wanted a cheap used Jeep. And so that's where everyone starts. They search for dealerships near them. And then they read the reviews, right? So I read all the reviews about, all these different Jeep dealerships that I was looking at. And obviously I want to work with the one that's the best, and that those reviews that say, hey, this is a cheap place, but great quality, great people to work with. That's where I'm going to buy my Jeep, right? And then I'll reach out to you via phone or text. With me, it actually is way more likely that I'm going to reach out to you if you have texting as an option, because sometimes I'm going to be at work looking up this Jeep, or I'm going to be, watching Netflix or something, and I don't really want to call you. That sells Jeeps, and went in there and had a conversation with the person that I was texting. And I didn't end up buying anything, but I did schedule a follow-up. I was like, you know what, I need to bring my husband in. He's at work, so I need to have him come look at the Jeep. And then hopefully, maybe sometime this week, I'll make a purchase. So we'll see what happens. But this follows this journey exactly. Like, my journey is this exact journey. So it's just funny that we're talking about it today. And then if I do have a good experience, I'll probably leave a review, and then that process repeats. So this is I just want you guys to internalize how important every step of this journey is. And if your dealership isn't, executing and being, a front runner in one of these areas, you really need to start thinking about, hey, what can I do better? Or how can I really be better at getting reviews? Or how can I be better about texting my customers? And if you have questions about this, please let me know. I mean, this is my job. This is what I help local businesses do, is helping you be able to, easily text your customers and get a lot of reviews. So, like, with this journey in mind and the attributes of the consumer journey and their traits, is that these online and offline worlds, they're totally colliding. And 87% of consumers say that brands need to do a better job of that seamless shopping experience. And what that means is that it feels the same in the store or in the dealership as it does online. A company that I think does this really well is Apple, and I know that it's not a dealership, but Apple does this really well. If you go to Apple's website, it feels like the Apple store, right? The type of service that you get. There's a chat functionality that I can say, hey, my Mac just broke. Where can I come get a new one? Where can I get it fixed? It's very fast, response time, things like that. But it's the same in the Apple store. As soon as you walk in the Apple store, someone is greeting you. Hey, what can I help you with? What can I help you with today? What are you looking for? And providing the information that they want online as well as offline. So I want you guys to think about this question is, what do you need to do to stay engaged at every single touch point? Whether that's online, so, we offer a web chat tool here at Podium that allows you to, have it on your website, and they can text you from your website. You want that same experience throughout every aspect of your business. So we're going to be talking about Omni-Channel, and we are talking about this throughout. But this is one of the most critical parts, is making sure that those offline and online experiences are very seamless and do feel the same, right? And so how do you make that transition, and make that seamless feeling? Like, whenever I'm, if I'm looking at cars on your website, or I'm coming into your dealership and wanting to test drive, that it feels the same. So there's three things that we really hit on. And the first is that you're telling the same story. Like, again, Apple does a fabulous job of telling that same story, that their products are simple, they're easy, you're going to get help fast. And so whatever your kind of mantra is at your dealership, make sure you're telling that story and that your employees are trained on that story so that they know the core benefits of your business, and they know, the core benefits of the car, and they're able to sell it, just as good as a website would be able to. And then focus on the customer. What are their needs? Usually when people are coming into the dealerships, right, they know what they want. Like, I knew exactly what I wanted. I wanted a Jeep, and I wanted it in the color black, and I knew exactly what I wanted it to look like. And so trying to understand what the customer, wants, whether it's on an online experience or offline, is crucial. And then figure out how all your channels are working together, whether, we're going to talk about that in a second, but all your marketing channels, all of your, communication that you're doing to customers is working together. So implementing an omni-channel strategy, this is kind of where that comes in. So after you kind of, you know what story you want to tell, now you're going to take it to the press. You're going to go and you're going to market this thing. You're going to put it on social media. So these are the different, types, right, that are out there, that you probably already do a lot of these, right? You're probably doing marketing, you're probably doing advertising, you're probably doing some type of lead gen or lead generation, communication in social media. All of these are ways that you can reach customers, right? And that you can, get more leads, and you can get more people coming in to buy cars. So what is an omni-channel communication strategy, and how do all of those fit in, right? We've been talking about this word for a while. So what this is that all of those communication channels, so your advertising, your social, your marketing efforts, anything, your emails that you're sending out, are aligned to provide a consistent high-level experience. So again, that goes back to making sure that your teams are trained on, hey, this is how we talk about this, or this is how we sell this car, this is the best pitch for this, or you know what I mean? And if you're telling that story consistently through all channels, whether it's on your website, whether it's, on a chat tool, whether it's in a text message, whether it's, asking for reviews, that it will provide this consistent experience for your customers, and it will just be more solid, right? They'll have a better experience. So we get asked this almost every time we do this webinar. So we added this slide just to say, what's multi-channel? What is the difference between multi-channel and omni-channel? So multi-channel was like, if I just started listing off, like TV, radio, like all these different types of, ways to communicate to people and to get your message out there, but without having a congruent message across the whole board, that's multi-channel. Omni-channel is just making it, consistent and having continuity between each channel. And doing so it's a little tricky, but hopefully today you can feel a little more comfortable after this webinar. We're going to give you some tips on how to do that here in a second, but I just want you guys to know that this is possible, and it does provide like a stellar experience on the customer's end if you do it correctly. So here are some tips on keys to the successful omni-channel strategy. So the first one is this, that meet customers on their preferred channels. I cannot emphasize enough, people kind of, laugh at us when we say texting is the future of business. And sometimes they laugh and they're like, well, my customers are, older, they don't know how to text, or they're, they want to have a phone conversation, or we want to have a phone conversation. If you aren't meeting them on their preferred channel, I think it's around like 87% of people would rather text a business than, call. So if you aren't, texting in some way, you're missing a lot of customers. For example, I would never call a dealership and be like, hey, do you have a Jeep? No, I wouldn't. I would only do it if I could text in, because I don't want to sit with a sales rep and be like, well, we have all these specials. I just want to know, no, do you have a Jeep? That's all I want to know. And then second, we say, personalize each interaction. So making sure that interaction is personalized. So if they are asking about a Jeep in a certain model or color or whatever it is, a certain car, that you are personalizing it, that you're saying, hey, yeah, you know, we talked a week ago, you know, if you are having a text messaging conversation, be like, hey, are you still interested in the Jeep? We have these available, we have this one on sale, this one just came in, on trade-in, whatever it is, that you're personalizing that interaction. And then third, we recommend that you consolidate all your interactions into one place so that they are consistent. This is what Podium does, right? Is that we consolidate, you know, Facebook messages, Google click to chat messages, SMS text messages, reviews, all into one platform, so that you can kind of have a snapshot of your communication in your business and your interactions with your customers. And so why that's so crucial and what we've seen is that people are able to be like, okay, this is what's going on, and these are the concerns, and this is the person addressing it, and they can assign the conversation to make sure that they're, you know, consistent, but they're also getting the help that they need when they need it. So if you don't have a platform that's already doing that, you really need to, because if you're doing it all from your personal cell phone, that would be a mess and not consistent, right? And you want to provide that same in-store experience as you are providing elsewhere. So let's talk a little bit about the communication channels that these U.S. consumers prefer. So this is just the U.S. census that we pulled this from, and I kind of alluded to this earlier. So this is across all age groups, right? This is just across the board. How do you want to communicate to businesses? And by far the number one is messaging. So, and phone is second, and we get a lot of people that still are like, well, people want to call me, which is great. But if you are not implementing text messaging in some way, if you don't have a textable number, if you don't have, hey, call or text advertised everywhere, you're missing the mark, right? And you're missing customers, because like there's customers like me that won't call you. They'll look at your website and be like, hey, well, I'm not going to call them. There's one right here that allows me to text. So why would, you know, it's just so much easier and more convenient. And so again, I just kind of alluded to this, that why people prefer messaging is that it is more convenient, right? I can save your dealership's number. I can be like, hey, this is the dealership that had the black Jeep with like the really cool rims. And I can, you know, save your phone number in my phone. And if I'm like, hey, sweet, I got a bonus this year, I'm going to reach out to see if they still, you know, have that Jeep or if they have one similar, because I know that, you know, I have your number, it's saved in my phone. I can reach out to your business and do business with you. It's asynchronous, so even if I text you, I'm not expecting an instant response. Whereas with a phone call, if I call your dealership and you don't pick up, I'm bugged, right? I'm bugged and I'm probably going to go somewhere else. So text, the beauty of text is that it gives you a little more leeway with that. Again, it's mobile and it's always maintained. So you can always see like, hey, we already talked to this customer, this is what they wanted, and you can, you know, address their needs that way. So we've done some research here at Podium. What are the most effective messaging channels for a business, for a small business, right? And what we found is the SMS text messaging obviously is number one because most people have a smartphone. And then Google Click to Message, which we're going to talk about these last two and how to set these up. But Google Click to Message is just a new thing that Google came out with that we'll talk about in a second, and then Facebook Messenger. So I want to give you some actionable, you know, things that you can go and leave this webinar and say, okay, I'm going to set this up and get some new leads, get some new customers coming in, and I guarantee you, as soon as you set this up, you're going to start seeing leads come in. So let's talk about how to set up Google Click to Message. So for those of you who don't know, and I hope all of you have a Google My Business page. If you don't, just hang up and go do it right now, because it's probably one of the most important things you can do. But so what you do once you have your Google My Business account is that you log into that Google My Business page and you select messaging in the upper left-hand menu, and then there's a place that you can add a phone number that will receive your text messages. We recommend that this is the same phone number as your landline, and Podium can make that textable for you and available, you know, to whoever you want to see these messages coming in. So let us know if you are interested in that. And then also verify that number with Google, right? And then secondly, you can set up Facebook Messenger, which we've seen actually a lot of sales from this as well. So we see a lot of sales in Google. There was actually one that came in the other day that was selling, you know, a truck. It was a dealership. Someone had found them on Google, and on that little blue box, I'll go back to the screen, on the little blue box that pops up when you say, like, you know, dealerships near me or Jeeps near me that I can buy or whatever. The little blue box came up, and if you have this enabled, basically it will show the phone, and then it will have a little text icon. If they click on that, it goes straight to their native texting app, so they can just shoot you a text. And this guy bought a Tundra via text. They were just sending pictures back and forth. Hey, this is the colors, this is the specs, blah, blah. The conversation went on for a long time. Anyways, sold the Tundra. It's so cool. So you are, you know, and that paid for itself, right? That's amazing. Anyways, and Facebook Messenger, same thing. We've seen a lot of sales through it. So how you set this up is you click on the settings at the top of your page, on your Facebook page, and then from that general tab, you select messages, and then you just click the box that says allow people to contact my page privately. Basically, that just allows them to send you a message. So if they're like, hey, I saw that you posted about this car, this is exactly what I'm looking for, the exact color, can I come look at it, or whatever it is. It's just another way for you to get leads. So I hope you guys feel a little more comfortable when we say omni-channel. I know that's a big word, but this is an omni-channel approach, right? Like, you're setting up on Google, you're setting up on text messaging, you're setting up on your website, you're setting up on Facebook, and you are good. And all these communications are being streamlined into one place. And if you have that, then you're able to, you know, execute easier, be more efficient with communication, and get more sales, which is so cool. So I'm going to turn it over to Dan now, and he's going to talk a little bit about the tips for improving this customer experience through messaging.
Awesome. Thanks, Brooke. So yeah, as we talk about these tips, you know, the reason why we created this is because we had people after these webinars say, love this idea, we obviously want to start messaging more, but where do we start? What are things we can start doing right away, which is where this comes from. So if you're just getting started, if you have a process in place, probably good to just check yourself against some of these things that we recommend, and then of course adapt it to whatever is easiest and what is best for you. The first thing, and where we saw a dramatic increase in benefit, was just in the appointment reminders. In a recent study, what we found is there is a 60% more likelihood of somebody showing up for their appointment if that reminder is sent via text. Obviously, the goal of that is everybody hates to have a no-show or someone not show up from that. Maybe not, I don't know, it depends on where you're at in the dealership, right? But in that regard, it's super helpful. I would also recommend, you know, some people have this automated where it's just yes or no, can you come tomorrow? And if it clicks no, it's like, okay, great, you're done and you're out of it. The reason why that doesn't work is because I can't have a conversation with you. And things happen. As we've looked in developing our own technology with appointment reminders, these bulk automated processes feel good for the dealerships, and you're saying, yep, check the box, I got an appointment reminder. But where I would challenge you or push back is to say, can a customer communicate with you? If they can't come then, when can they come? Or there's certain things like, for example, I had to confirm an appointment with a dealership. I have 2 different vehicles. At the one dealership, it was just like, do you have an oil change this date, yes or no? And I couldn't do anything else. When I got there, I had to explain other things that needed to be done. On the other experience I had with another dealership, it was like, hey, Dan, are we still good at this time? Yes, by the way, I also need this stuff to be looked at. The dealership got an upsell because I'm a sucker and like to buy things. But it was also just so much more engaging. I knew I was going to show up. So as you're doing it, again, the 5% of people that really optimize this are doing those little things like personalization, making it easier for the customer. Now, anybody that's opened some of these messaging apps to their dealership, like Facebook Messenger or Google Click to Chat, you probably are noticing that there's a lot of different conversations going on back and forth. Some of the conversations that I've seen from dealerships are, hey, my credit score is blank, what can I buy? Now, the reason why we double down on these messaging apps versus like a live chat is just because you can't have those types of conversations, and customers don't want to become a lead. I know at the dealership level, and I get it, I run a sales team and I live and die by my leads, but at the same time, these are different types of conversations. As Brooke mentioned, she doesn't want someone to reach back out to her via phone. She just has a quick question of like, can I customize the rims? Hey, is that a 4-cylinder? And what is really frustrating and where you have customers drop off in your sales funnel is when it's, hey, I think so, or I don't know, but let me get a specialist who is in touch. It's super annoying. Customers are going to go somewhere else because you are not the only dealership with that vehicle. They can find it anywhere. And what customers want is convenience. And so that's where, our goal is to turn those online searches into in-store customers to be able to purchase. And conversations are the easiest way to get that done. And look, everybody knows the sales tactics. I try and do it to dealerships try and do it to their customers, and we all know what we're doing to each other. So don't be the person that tries to ensnare them with the, man, I don't know the question, but if you can come in, I bet I can find it. Like, that's stupid. It's bullshit, and people can totally see through it. So don't do it. Be helpful. That's what people want. You will be shocked and amazed at the loyalty that you get from people, and just to answer the questions. Don't turn them into these leads or other things that you have to pass on. Again, going to my previous, there's a ton of upsell opportunities. As a customer gets into their vehicle, I work with a dealership group out of California where the BDC manager who gets them into their car, the last thing that they'll say or do is, look, you just got a new car. I'm sure you want to go take it for a drive. And as you drive it, you're probably going to find some things that you would like to add to this vehicle later. We don't have to go over it today, but I'm going to shoot you my number. And if you will text us back, we're going to give you 20% off any accessory that you buy within the first 90 days of you owning this vehicle. So as you're going down the road, feel free to text us with any questions or concerns that you have about the vehicle. As customers drive, again, you probably would not think this. You would be amazed. People will say, hey, do you guys do tint? Or, man, I love this vehicle, but I would like to add a stereo system. Tint is the #1 thing that people were requesting when they would text this customer back, obviously California. But then there was also other things like floor mats. Hey, I remember the weather floor mats. Could I still throw that in if I'm interested? You will be, or even once you hit the 90 days, shoot a quick text of, hey, I hope you're enjoying the vehicle. By the way, is there anything else or anything that we could help you with that vehicle? And again, they're finding ways to just do little upsells to the customers. And customers are happy because they feel like, hey, this is our dealership. Now, this next tip is really important as well in regards to just get feedback. Dealerships, this is like a scary place because nobody likes to have somebody tell them they have an ugly boyfriend or girlfriend, right? So when you ask for feedback, it's like, what am I opening myself up for? But what we have found is whenever a dealership gets a low CSI score, obviously the reason they got it is because that customer is upset. What was interesting, though, is we looked at data between dealerships who were texting for feedback and then doing the CSI later, is their CSI scores actually started to improve. Now, you may be asking why. The reason is because customers want to vent. They want to be frustrated. Like, I had to wait 40 minutes in this fast food line the other day, and I was boxed in so I couldn't get out. And I was going to every communication channel possible, trying to say how ridiculous this was. But once I got that out, I was good. I was okay. And as we look at these dealerships, there are people who get frustrated and they get upset and they want to vent to somebody. And then once they do, they're good. And they get their CSI scores, or they get their CSI survey and they give really good scores. And dealerships are scratching their heads saying, like, we just didn't think this would happen. There's also the fact that, hey, you can actually take care of that customer still. Maybe you just didn't know that they were upset. If you're selling a lot of vehicles, or there's always that one friend or customer that will never tell you to their face how they feel, but then as soon as they get behind a computer screen, they're going to go crazy on you. So just understand that there's a lot of value into that, and especially increasing your CSI scores, and also what we have found just from customers already. In regard to this is kind of a funny one, and it's just as, hey, how do we solve problems really quick for customers? I was talking to a dealership in Texas where the individual couldn't figure out how to sync their garage door opener to their vehicle. And so the dealership, the individual there, genius, it was a young girl who made just a quick video on her phone of, hey, I know this is what you're doing, this is how you sync it, sent the video back to the customer, and the customer just raved about it and sent a couple of referrals, and then just kept saying again and again how awesome it was that she was smart enough, or she was thinking outside the box, just to send a quick video of how to fix that problem, or how to, solve the issue there. So again, think in terms of what's a really quick way and what's easiest and most convenient for the customer. And it may not always be as easy for you, especially at first as you navigate this, but as you get into it, you'll start to find processes, things that make that really simple for you on your end. The last thing, of course, is just invite customers to review your business. There is a number of benefits as to why you should be collecting reviews, and if you don't know that, then by all means start doing research, because if you're not, you're probably really far behind. But yeah, are you going to be exposed a little bit more because people can review you and it's easier? And I hear dealerships all the time that'll say, hey, look, man, if I do that, then my upset customers are going to be able to leave a review. Yeah, they will. And if you're doing customer that pisses people off all the time, newsflash, you're not going to be in business much longer, right? Because every customer's upset, which is why, what we have found is, of all the review invites sent via text, and again, we don't do any review gates or anything like that to try and trick customers. We believe in transparency and honesty. And as we've sent out over 10 million review invites, we have found that less than 3% of customers leave a negative review. Now, why is that? The reason being is you have so many happy customers. You wouldn't be in business if you didn't have happy customers. So understand, it's like I have to remind myself that if my wife tells me 5 things she likes about me and 1 negative thing, I always dwell on the 1 negative thing and completely forget about the 5 positives. So it's important to understand that, yeah, you'll get some negative ones, but you're going to get a ton of positive that will just surprise you and really help you understand what is it about your dealership that you do good. And guess what? Those negative ones are good because it builds validation. If there was any dealership that had a constant 5-star dealership, that dealership is doing something crazy, and it's like, it just doesn't exist. Google is going to remove all your reviews because that just isn't possible. I don't know of any dealership that is just constant 5 stars without review gating or trying to do anything else, and it's really against Google's terms and policy. So again, be transparent, show customers who you are. You'll be amazed. I worked with a dealership who was at a 3.3 star rating, told them, look, we don't review gate, we're sending text messages to everybody, and they panicked and were worried. I'm like, try it for a month, let's see what happens. After 2 months, they got over a 4.2 star rating. They collected about 400 reviews in that time period and saw an increase in, obviously traffic coming in because of their local search presence. So any press is good press. Take the good with the bad, and don't worry about those. So as you talk about this, building this strategy, make sure customers, the number one thing everybody loves is to hear their own name. Bud, pal, chief, guys, like nothing will drive somebody away faster than that type of a comment. Reference the purchase, their service experience. Anniversaries are always a great time to just say, hey, how's the truck or car working out for you? And then what's nice is whenever, you know, a little bit of background as we talked about building our product specifically, everyone loves this idea of like, I just want it automated or I want something to be bulk. And you know what those emails feel like, and I guarantee you hardly ever click on those because they're just so general blanketed that there's nothing valuable there, as opposed to being able to say, you know, hey Dan, how is your F-150? Is there anything we can help you with? Is your wife still interested in looking at the new expeditions? Things like that really go a long way, because we do live in a world where dealerships are kind of like convenience stores, and I can go wherever I want. I'm going to go to the place where I feel special. I feel like people are going to take care of me. You know, I think there's a post that gets thrown out a lot where it's like, look, Uber, Lyft, they didn't destroy the taxi companies. Taxi companies destroyed themselves because they weren't willing to innovate. Dealerships aren't going away, but if you're not willing to innovate, if you're not willing to personalize and change things for people, you're going to be left in the dust. And so that's why, you know, it's important to consolidate all of your interactions into just one area, personalize those messages. Again, I know at the beginning, yeah, this may be a little tough, but just in the short time we've been doing this, we're already working on processes, things that are streamlining, making this easier without losing that personal touch and branding to the customer as well as to the dealership there. So again, thank you, of course, for joining in on this webinar. We really appreciate it. Love being able to come out and talk. If you are interested in seeing anything with Podium, of course, there's always a promo code, Podium18, PODIUM18. I know I went through that quick, but feel free to check it out there and get a discount on your purchase. And we will open it up to Q&A now and answer any questions that you may have and go from there.
A lot of great information from Brooke and Dan. Thank you so much. And just as a reminder, we are recording today's webinar, so you can go through the great analysis and recommendations that Podium has shared and distribute that material to others at your store to craft the strategy that works best at your store. And to begin our conversation, Dan and Brooke, a great question came in during the presentation, discussing that how we not only live in a mobile world, but it's almost a 24/7 world. That someone might be shopping for a vehicle. It's 1 in the morning and might be shooting a message. How have dealerships handled inquiries that might come in when the dealership is closed or on holidays or other off hours with these mediums? What could you offer there?
Yeah, that's a great question. In fact, we just created something about a year ago for this in Podium, because that was a huge concern with people. Hey, well, people are going to text me at 10 o'clock when they're watching Netflix, just like Brooke did, right? Like I did that literally like last weekend. And what we came up with was an autoresponder. So when someone texts in that is not during your business hours, or whenever you select that you do not want to receive text messages to your Podium account, you can set up an autoresponder that says, hey, sorry, we're not in right now, but we'll get back to your message in the morning, or we'll get back to you on Monday, or we'll get back to you as soon as we can. You can set this up for lunch breaks. You can set this up when you are incredibly busy. Whatever you want to do, you can do that. And the cool part about this is that we've actually seen sales come from it because people are okay with it, because they're like, oh, well, they responded. They're just, you know, they're not in office, so I'll just wait for a text tomorrow. And there's actually been people that have bought stuff, you know, that it's been like 3 days and they still, you know, like a weekend, right? And they've still bought cars. So, yeah.
The voices that you're hearing, that's Brooke Grant and Dan Wright from Podium for our webinar, Why Your Dealership Needs an Omni-Channel Communication Strategy in 2018, and certainly discussed a lot of great tips and recommendations and how those messages can arrive at the dealership. what's been some best practices as far as other dealerships is one person oftentimes receiving all these messages? Is it a team at the BDC? What have been some strategies that have worked for other stores of who at the dealership is handling all these inquiries?
Yeah, such a great question. And to that point, I failed to mention one of the questions we get, or kind of one of the processes or things that people think is, hey, once I turn this on, I'm going to have like 1,000 messages a day, which doesn't happen, right? I mean, that's not, like, you're not going to see that type of lead or conversation flow come in, depending on which dealership you are, I guess. But what we have found is that it usually starts pretty small, and then as it starts going more and more, you'll see that volume kick up. So depending on your size of dealership, if you do have somebody who's a BDC in the BDC department, that's a great place to start. I've also seen the receptionist who will take these conversations, because it's nice to be able, in Podium, you can actually reassign conversations to people and manage it that way. So again, you can almost just have a receptionist kind of handle that and just say, okay, I can answer this question, or hey, I actually need to get somebody else involved with this type of conversation. So that's one is that you open it, you're not going to have this crazy influx of conversation. So start maybe at a receptionist or BDC area. As it grows, you'll start to see, okay, service will handle this type of conversation, sales will handle these types of conversations, and it will grow as you start to leverage these message channels, especially Facebook Messenger. Now that they've launched that auto marketplace on there, we're seeing a ton of conversations where dealerships will list inventories on Facebook Marketplace, and then instantly Facebook Messenger conversations will come back in, and that's something you can throw right into sales or to the reception department. So kind of a good place to start.
That's Dan Rice along with Brooke Grant of Podium for our webinar today, Why Your Dealership Needs an Omni-Channel Communication Strategy in 2018. And the folks at Podium are offering a generous promotional code that you can see there on the screen, Podium18, for a pathway to their products and services. And to close our closing moments here, to wrap up our webinar, wanted to, Dan and Brooke, give each of you an opportunity to offer some closing thoughts, as well as maybe some recommendations of what might be some metrics that dealerships can see how to analyze how their strategy is working, and how long they should give the changes a chance to kind of be implemented. How quickly should they be doing analysis to see the effectiveness? So any closing points and anything you'd like to add as far as how dealerships can measure the effectiveness of their omni-channel strategy?
Yeah, so, let me just start, and I'll speak more. The awesome thing, and if anybody has, further questions, Brooke Grant works very close with companies like Facebook, Google, very familiar with that part of what's going on from their end, because look, we get it. You guys didn't ask for all of these communication platforms to be built. These, Facebook built it because they built it for their customers, and Brooke knows that very well. So I would say if anybody has questions about those types of things, what's coming down, reach out to her. She'll be able to handle it. From a dealership's perspective, look, all too often people like to take this approach of let's try it. If it doesn't work, we're going to pull it back. And with this, I would recommend it's just like a science experiment. You're going to have a hypothesis of here's how we should try it and where we should implement these strategies. And then you should look at it once a week and just talk as a team. Hey, are we accomplishing goals? And the goals you should be looking at, our metrics are we selling more vehicles? Are we having more people in our dealership? What are the types of conversations that are taking place? And then let's build data around that. And you will be amazed, again, absolutely amazed. If your vehicles aren't on Facebook Messenger or Facebook Marketplace, step one is like, do that immediately, because you'll start to see leads come from there. But then also these really clever Google click-to-message areas as well. Just talk about, hey, here's the conversations we're seeing. How do we optimize for that? And what are some tactics that we can try to, really answer questions, get people into the dealership as quick as possible. So that's what I'll just say is, when you try it, you're going to stumble and fall. Don't worry. It's okay. Treat this as a hypothesis and as an experiment, and have fun with it. See what things you can do. Think outside the box. So as far as the dealership's perspective, that's how I would say to handle it. And leave it to Brooke now to kind of have that closing thought.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. No, that was perfect. I would just add, like I was saying, we're seeing more and more, even just today, I was, got some Google alerts from just how much text messaging is impacting the industry, especially dealerships. And if you aren't on that bandwagon, again, please get on it as soon as possible, because you're going to miss the boat and it's not going to be fun, but you're going to have to play a lot of catch up. So if you start now, you're kind of in that first ride of the wave, and you can just ride that wave all day long and into the future. So again, if you have any questions, let us know, and we're happy to help.
That's Brooke Grant along with Dan Wright of Podium for our webinar today, Why Your Dealership Needs an Omni-Channel Communication Strategy in 2018. A lot of great recommendations and tips on how to improve operations at your store, and keep watch of your inbox for a recording of today's webinar that you can revisit this great information and share it with others at your store. So for the team at Podium, Dan Wright and Brooke Grant, and for all of us at Cherokee Media Group, we thank you for joining us. I'm Nick Zulovich, and we look forward to having you again next time.